I'm Norman Liss, and the name of the program is The Way to Go. I invite you to join me each week at this time as we explore places to go and things to do in this area. Today we're exploring music, and we're exploring the new Orchestra of Westchester. And my guest today is the director, Paul Lustig Dunkel, and I'm delighted to have you here today and to talk about music and what people are enjoying today and our tastes changing. But what is the greatest challenge that faces you as the director of an outstanding orchestra?
Well, I suppose in a nutshell, and that's a difficult question, thanks for asking it first, is keeping the audiences happy, keeping the audiences enthused, involved, intellectually stimulated, keeping my musicians happy and intellectually stimulated, and then finally keeping my board of directors happy. And I do that by not spending too much money, staying within the budget, and sometimes that's difficult, but I've got a real good record that way.
But you've made an interesting point. You said your audiences. Now, it's not the same audience. The same people are not the same people sitting in the same seat for every performance.
A lot of them are. A lot of our people are subscribers, and that's the blood of any symphonic ensemble. That the people who come on a Saturday night in September are the same people who come November and December and January and so on. So yeah, I do have to play to that same crowd, and it's funny. Sometimes they come and they like my programming, and I hear nothing from them except applause. But if they don't like the programming, and that happens occasionally because, after all, I'm sort of like a chef creating a different event for them each concert, I'll hear about it. And boy, do I hear about it sometimes.
So how do you determine what your programming is going to be, since you're talking about the same audience at each concert and year after year in many cases?
Listen, that problem, it's a killer for me, because not only do I have to satisfy those people who are coming back, but each person in that audience has a different musical taste, and my tastes shift. So, for example, some year I might be totally in love with Brahms, and I say, I'm going to do Brahms, a lot of Brahms. And the next year I might say, well, I've had enough Brahms. Let's put him aside for a while. I also like to experiment somewhat. My reputation is that of being a person who does not like to do the same thing all the time. And sometimes I'll reach out and get a young composer or a piece that hasn't been done or a piece that people don't know. And sure, it's a risk. Anytime you do that with an audience, you're challenging them. Sometimes I have never even heard the piece myself, or I'll take a recommendation from somebody who's played a piece, another conductor, and said, you got to do this composer, he or she. Really terrific.
How do you know if it works or it doesn't work? You say that you hear if it's not good.
Yeah.
But do you actually hear it at the time of the performance?
Sure.
How?
And it's the first thing, very little applause. And that's always a great indicator, as it is anywhere else.
I want to talk about applause for a moment,
sure.
And then we'll go on from there. A lot of people applaud because they feel that they should applaud. Mm-hmm. Many times, I personally sense this, not only in concerts, but in the theater,
sure.
that there are people there who are friends of the family, so to speak, who start the applause. Is applause a good sense? Are your friends, relatives, and supporters applauding to get it started?
You don't have enough friends or relatives in the world that if you just performed a bomb, they can't change the course of that evening. If it's bad, it's going to be bad. So far, we haven't ever had a piece like that or a performance like that or a soloist or a symphony like that. But, it is a good indicator. Because we're in the entertainment business, and
sure.
We're like a theater, we're like a musical, we're like the opera, and if the people after a while decide that they don't like what they're doing, they're not going to be there. There's an old line, I think Saul Hurok said, if the people don't want to come, you can't force them. If they're not going to come, you can't force them. I think when he said it was funnier. Right now, it didn't sound too funny. But yeah, it's the whole problem that I have to satisfy people, and yet keep it interesting enough for me so that I stay in the game. It's a very delicate balance.
Does it ever become uninteresting to you?
No, because there are too many variables in my line of work that I can ever say relax, that I can ever say there's no challenge.
What are the variables?
Well, let's supposing that on a particular night the orchestra might not be, so we say, feeling well as a group, as a body. This happens, you know. I remember playing in orchestras many years ago when one person around me would flub something. And then the next thing that happens is somebody else flubs something. Pretty soon, I'm flubbing and everybody else is.
It's a virus.
It's catching. It's like, you know, sometimes you'll get a great baseball team, and that day, everybody's dropping the ball and striking out. You know, we can be great, but we can't be great and consistent all those days running. So, you know, so when that happens, you've got to try to marshal the forces like a general. It's really I always think that a music director has to be, in a sense, a general, and you got to get control of the situation. And basically, you say, "Stop that, straighten out," you know. But you do it through musical ways, not through any kind of threat or brutality.
All the time you're standing up there shaking your stick.
Well, you know that stick is about the most overrated thing any conductor has. Everybody thinks of a conductor with that baton. You know a performance is going well, or I feel that a performance is really going well when I'm not beating that much, when I'm sort of standing back. We just did a performance of Brahms Symphony No. 1. And about a minute and a half into the performance, I realized that something very special was happening. This happens occasionally. It doesn't happen all the time. It's a magic moment. I guess a lot of times audiences sense that magic is happening more than the performers. But at this particular time, this performance, I said, something phenomenal is taking place. And I sort of stepped back, not physically, I don't get off the podium and walk off the stage, although, you know, if an orchestra is prepared, a conductor could do that. But I sort of say figuratively, step back and sort of listen, not get in the way, not impose myself. After all, we've done all the work in the rehearsal. And I took the opportunity to actually listen as though I were an audience member. When that happens, I think that's the ultimate experience for a conductor. You've done your work in rehearsal. The musicians are just playing beautifully. You don't have to wave that stick. And you let them listen to each other. And that is when you say to yourself, that's why I'm conducting, because I've created this.
There are performers who I've talked to, singers, actors, and musicians, who say that, I ask, what are you thinking when you're up there? And I've heard this often, that you're thinking so technically about getting it right that that's the most important thing. Is that true as a conductor?
Yes, to a certain extent. It's a very accurate description. The thing about a conductor is what people tend to forget. Unlike an actor, we don't talk. We don't perform. Unlike a musician, we don't make a sound. We are, as far as I can see, the only performer that really isn't doing anything. I mean, when you get right down and analyze it. So basically what we're doing at that moment of performance is sort of making sure things, in a sense, don't get out of hand. Like if somebody's playing too loud, stop them. The balance is wrong. It's mainly quality control, I think, is the term they use in industry. Because it's too late to shape anything at that point. It's too late to tell people how to play something.
So are you tense up there? Is it a pressure situation for you?
You know, actually less than performing. When I was a flute player, I used to get, not nervous, but in terms of comparison, much more tense, if you want to use that word. It's certainly not a bad word to use, because there is a certain amount of tension involved in performance, which is not, by the way, a bad thing. I think, as an aside to explain that, I used to sit next to a very fine oboist who had played for many years in the Pittsburgh Symphony. And I said, gee, I really feel great after this performance. It came so easily. And he said, that's when you got to watch out. When everything feels comfortable and relaxed, you're almost guaranteed to have a dull performance. And I think it's true.
So most of what you do as conductor is done beforehand.
Absolutely. Almost, I say 99%.
So let's go backwards a little bit now. First of all, let's talk about where you perform and when you perform. What is the schedule? Not specifically what's forthcoming, but what are you doing in terms of the new Orchestra of Westchester and its program? Is it play at a regular concert?
Yeah, we do. We play, I would say, at about 7-week intervals, starting in September, going all the way through May. We do a concert on Saturday evening. We repeat the same concert on Sunday evening. It's been a very successful pairing. Our programs are at the Center for the Arts at SUNY Purchase. Now, I think they've actually changed the name of the college. It's called the College at Purchase now. I think it's official finally.
It'll always be SUNY Purchase to me, no matter what they do.
I don't care. I'm with you. It's called the Concert Hall. It used to be called Theater A. It's a beautiful hall. It's not too large. I always think that's a Philharmonic Hall, a Fisher Hall. At Lincoln Center is a little too large and impersonal. We're only 1,400 seats, so that no matter where you sit there, you feel a connection with the orchestra. You know, it's like really being joined. It's acoustically very fine. In terms of comfort for an audience, I don't think it can be beat. You can park there. It's a short walk to the hall.
What's involved with planning your program and planning the concert? Where do you start?
For example, maybe we can say this might be a little bit of a scoop. I'm now thinking of next year's programs, and in fact, what I'm going to do is consider programming in a 2-year cycle. So. The idea that I've had, and of course it's not official yet, but I'm trying to create a 2-year program whereby each concert will target a particular nationality or a region. So I'm looking at doing, say, a Russian program, an Italian program, and but an overview of all those cultures, and perhaps even looking at American music that has been influenced by all of those. So it'll be sort of like a 2-year travel log. And what I do is once I come up with a concept, which is the most important thing, then the next step is coming up, believe it or not, with soloists that will work in each one of those. So it would be nice, obviously, if I found somebody who could really play a great Russian concerto for a Russian program, even if it's not a Russian, but it would be nice. We're in the business of actually giving the opportunity to a lot of young players. We know they're going to be stars, and we've been right, but they're not quite stars
now,
yet.
when you talk about players, you're talking about soloists.
Soloists.
The orchestra itself consists of a set group of performers?
Yes.
They've been with the orchestra for many years? I suppose it's always changing.
Yeah, there is change, and some of it is good when people, for example, leave our orchestra and go to the Philadelphia Orchestra or the New York Philharmonic. We've lost a couple, Chicago Symphony, for example, and then there's change when I feel, and I don't like to do it, but when I have to replace a player, move them down in the section, which a music director always is going to do. It just happens. It's sad, but we must, again...
Now, the music business is one that I'm not that up on. You play a concert every 7 weeks, so these musicians play in other orchestras as well?
Absolutely. Our membership is culled from other groups in the New York metropolitan area. The beauty of having such an orchestra in Westchester is we're neighbors with the greatest freelance pool of musicians in the entire world. I don't care if you're in England, if you're in London, if you're in Moscow. You can drive into New York City practically and stand on a street corner, and within half an hour, practically, you can put a chamber orchestra together just by looking at the people coming by with instruments. So I have a selection of the cream of the crop. Now, these people play, for example, New York City Ballet, New York City Opera, Metropolitan Opera, Orchestra of St. Luke's, American Brass Quintet. And they like to play in our orchestra because, number one, they're treated very well, and number two, they believe, and I think they're right, that I have a great respect for the music and for them as musicians. And I give them the opportunity for input. I hire such high-quality players that if a musician comes to me and says, let's do this piece next year, or let's play this particular piece, maybe can we try this phrasing? Well, I'll listen to them because I hire good players.
I'm going to get a little different perspective. In 2 weeks, one of my guests that I've arranged for is a freelance violinist who plays in many of these orchestras, and he is going to give us a viewpoint from where he comes on what it is, and he'll play for us too a little bit. So that should be very interesting. His name is Martin Stoner. I don't know if you.
I know Martin very well. Sure.
Yes,
it'll be a wonderful show.
And so let's get back to the audiences and the concerts, because you say that you have the same audiences, but nobody can exist if you stand still.
Right.
You go backwards, because audiences do change. Developing new audiences must be an enormous function.
It should be an enormous function, and it should be a responsibility that music directors accept more readily. I don't think I'd be wrong in saying that most music directors are concerned with the present time and worrying about their concerts. I look down the road, and I'm not looking 2 or 3 years down the road. I'm looking at the next generation. One of the things that I think it's incumbent on any music director to do, and I take this very serious, is to get involved in education programs so that we do have orchestras in 20 years. The way things are going, I believe right now in this country, that maybe a generation or a generation and a half down the road will not have the opportunity to hear symphony orchestras because of what's happening to the music education in our schools. Our orchestra is very concerned about this. We have a terrific education program, arts program in this county for 3rd through 6th graders. We're starting to get kids now, high school kids now, who were in our programs 8, 9 years ago, who are now coming to concerts really on their own. I mean, they forget their driver's license.
What do you mean in your program? What is your program?
Well, basically what it is we are affiliated with practically every school in Westchester County, plus some in Bronx, Rockland, and in Connecticut. We've created curricula, several of them, for music, which operates in an interdisciplinary approach. So it's not only music, but it's music in comparison to art, to history, to science, architecture, religion, philosophy.
So what do you provide to them?
We provide for the schools a curriculum. It's this thick. Mm-hmm. And then we train the teachers, not only the music teachers, but the classroom teachers, the art teachers, in the use of this curriculum. Then our musicians will go into the schools and talk about the music. By the time the kids come to our concerts, and these are held in the morning at SUNY, they are really very sophisticated audiences. Mm-hmm. They've heard the music before. They understand its relationship to history of the present day. They understand. They know what I do. They know what the orchestra does. You know, it's not like this is a flute and it sounds like this. We're way beyond that. I mean, it's very sophisticated. That's the way to build audiences.
And the music itself now, since so many of your regular subscribers come to all of your concerts, you can't repeat yourself too often, can you? You can't play the same thing. I mean, if someone is a Mahler freak, you can't play Mahler at every concert, and maybe you can't play Mahler at every 6 concerts. How do you balance that?
It's really hard. Probably, maybe the hardest problem I have. When you figure that on our main series, we do 5 concerts over the year, okay? Now, figure that we'll do on the average of 3 pieces, 3.5 pieces all year, on each concert all year. That's 15 times 3, close to, I would say 18 works. I've got to choose 18 pieces for our series with variety, so I can't do Beethoven or Mahler in every concert, and I've got to try to hit all of the centuries, and I've got to try to hit different size ensembles for the orchestra. It's tough. Now, I think in our 10-year history, I've never repeated a symphony. I've never repeated an overture. The only thing I've ever repeated are a concerto here and there. I think I've done the rock.
That's interesting. And yet people buy recordings to play over and over and over again the same symphony that they love and they're familiar with.
Right.
Now, and yet you don't repeat in your live concerts. Is there some conflict between those two viewpoints? People do want to hear the familiar.
Yeah, we always do give them something on a program that they know. I mean, you know, I'll use the Beethoven Fifth example because people do like that. Oh, it's a great piece. You know, one of the greatest. I'll be the first to admit that. But on the other hand, they can hear this on their own. What's fun? I'll tell you what's fun is when we do a classic piece. A classic in the sense that it's well known and loved. And somebody will come to me after the performance and say, you know, I've been listening to my Von Karajan recording for the last 20 years. And this is the first time that I've heard something different in this piece that you've done. Now, to me, that's extraordinarily gratifying. First of all, to be compared with somebody like Herbert von Karajan, but also to have the people hear a piece differently for a change. You know, it's like going to a museum. You know, you walk by the same painting all the time. Finally, a curator says to you, look, you know, next time look at this line, the way everything leads to this particular spot. Notice how the brush texture changes throughout, and it's, you have never seen that before.
Now that change comes from you to the orchestra?
Yeah. It's remarkable how you...
Do you change in the way you would conduct or rehearse the same piece?
Absolutely. I guess people would have a problem understanding that, but your question is terrific. If I did, I just said we did Brahms Symphony. Next year, I might go 180 degrees in terms of the way I approach that piece. Maybe I'll listen to a tape of the way I've done it and say, I think my tempos were too fast here. I might take a more relaxed approach, or vice versa. Or I might say, I'd like to bring out this section, these inner voices. Now with these pieces, each one is a treasure trove. It's just not there's not one way of doing these pieces. That's the beauty of it. That's why with the classics, you really never do get tired of doing them. I get tired of hearing the Beethoven Fifth Symphony, but maybe not doing it. That's maybe why Kurt Masur of New York Philharmonic, who does not have the largest repertoire in terms of what other conductors have, but he does some of those classics over and over again, and I hear them different each time. I find that interesting from the technical standpoint.
And where does it lead you to? Does it lead you to do things that are adventurous? Do you experiment? Do you sometimes do an interpretation that might be controversial?
Sometimes I get myself in a position, and I think any conductor who really is we're not trying to be different, but we're looking for truth. That's the bottom line. You're presented with a score. You look at the score, and it doesn't come to life. You're looking at it, and you want to make it come to life. You say, how can I bring this to life? Well, sometimes you might come up with an idea, and you follow it to what you think is your logical conclusion. I've realized sometimes in performance that I might not be on the right track, but it's too late by then because I've committed myself. But that's what art is all about. You make the commitment, and you live with it until the time that you change. There's nothing worse, in my opinion, about a performing artist that doesn't have a commitment, that doesn't have a perspective. And I used to play under conductors that were like that they would come in sort of unprepared, but not have really an idea of a shape of a piece. Like an actor who hasn't analyzed, what his character really is.
What are the influences? You talk about listening to a recording that might give you an idea. What other influences are there that lead to your interpretation of how this particular piece is going to be played?
In the most perfect of worlds, which this is not, conductors wouldn't hear other recordings of other conductors, but that's impossible. So obviously, when I was growing up and playing, I played under great conductors and I heard them. George Sell, for example, he's in my ear. Somehow, I always say to myself, how would he do it? Or, in a French piece, maybe, I would say, how would, for example, Pierre Monteux or Pierre Boulez do it, who I respect very much.
You're conscious of the particular influence that you hear in your ear.
But what I try to do is look at this music that's in front of me, lifeless, and try to bring it to life. See what the composer intended, because composers did have intent. And there's certain historical periods, where that if a composer wrote such and such, it meant such and such. Not just in terms of the notes and the articulation and the dynamic, but in terms of, in a sense, the spiritual message of the piece.
How do you work that out? In your head?
Yeah. Or, at the keyboard playing, hacking through, seeing how things go. But I do a lot of work in my inner ear.
So you can actually hear all of that without actually, you I assume, can play it on a piano?
Yes.
Even though that's not your instrument?
Yes, well, it was.
Oh, it was your
first instrument.
Oh, it was your first instrument. Yeah. And you hear it in your head, so you can actually hear the nuances in the music and what you're going to do before you ask the musicians to do it.
Yes, but it's never as beautiful as when they actually do it. In other words, it's a clinical kind of approach. I don't have the ability, maybe some conductors do, to hear the glorious sound of an orchestra. You hear violin, but until the violinist or your section actually put their fingers on the strings and start bowing, and it comes to life, it's sort of it's not real. It's a laboratory kind of thing.
And if it's a laboratory, so you're also gaining from the musicians, because an interpretation may come. Could the same musician play the same piece differently because of his or her interpretation at a
I think so.
given day?
I think so.
Or do you
sure.
take your will and bestow it upon them and say, this is the way I want this played?
Well, the real conductor will come to the musicians and not necessarily will say, this is the way I want it to be played, but the way he shapes in terms of tempo, in terms of asking for dynamic, in terms of asking for color of sound, that will shape the performance. Now, the thing about musicians is that they are very willing to allow you to shape them. There's nothing worse for a fellow sitting in an orchestra to have a conductor not ask for anything, because then it's a meaningless artistic experience.
Mm-hmm.
They want to be asked, they want to work at it. It's nothing worse than sitting in a rehearsal and feeling that you haven't worked. It's very exhilarating to really roll up your sleeves and go for a goal.
The musicians come to the first rehearsal prepared because they know the piece and they've worked on it.
Generally.
They're not playing it cold, are they?
Unless it's a new work that they've never played before, and that's tough because they don't know how it should sound in general. Everybody knows Brahms and Beethoven and Mozart, or has,
Right.
or they think they
But
know.
they may not have played that piece and had the
Right.
music and played it.
Right.
So they just sit there and sight read it, and
Absolutely, and I've got a group of
it's like
players.
it's like a mass of clay that then starts to mold into the piece of sculpture.
Very well put.
And it's a question of how much time do you have to rehearse to put something like that together?
Well, it's really criminal because we rehearse basically for each concert 8 hours, sometimes 10 if it's an extraordinarily difficult program.
How many sessions would that be?
3 sessions, 2 rehearsals and a dress, which, for your audience who might have played in high school or in a band, they're probably sitting there in total disbelief that this can happen, that you can get a performance that sounds so good.
Total disbelief is the fact that we've run out of time.
Oh.
I certainly thank you for coming and giving us this insight into the making of a concert. My guest today has been Paul Lustig Dunkel, who is the director of the new Orchestra of Westchester. They play concerts every 7 weeks at SUNY Purchase, and I'm sure that you will enjoy their concerts. My name is Norman Liss. The name of the program is The Way to Go, and I invite you to join me next week at the same time. Until then, enjoy yourself.